It is a great honor and a privilege to introduce Eva Evans. Your maiden name was Klopstock, and Eva, you were born nearly 100 years ago in Berlin, in Germany. We're here in your beautiful apartment in London, and the book that you wrote, Once a Refugee, Always a Refugee. So Eva, you have had the most amazing life. You got an MBE. But if you could tell us a little bit about your background and your incredible family and what you remember growing up in Germany. Okay, Eva, if you could tell us about your parents.
Well, my parents, or in fact my whole family, has lived several centuries in Germany. And they felt quite at home. But of course they belonged to the Jewish community, and the only one Jewish thing they did, there was an association, a cultural association in Germany for the Jewish population, and they had the theatre and of course concerts. My parents, especially my mother, was very well educated, and she was a person who really admired the German writers like Goethe and Schiller. She knew them practically by heart, and she was spouting Goethe and Schiller from the time she was a young person. And so this made us a little bit different also from the other German refugees, who mostly were, even if they were not a lot of some German Jewish people were secular, but most of them kept the high holidays and that sort of thing, and there were plenty of synagogues in Berlin. And I think my daughter said you would be particularly interested in what we call Crystal Night. And I believe it's now called a program. What is it? What's called in Poland, I think. That's new. It was new to me, but this was one of the alterations my daughter made in my book, to talk about Crystal Night as program. What do I say?
Pogrom.
Pardon?
A pogrom.
Pogrom, yes. Pogrom. And in my days it was still Crystal Night for all the broken glass. But where we lived in Berlin, there were actually no synagogues nearby, and in the morning, my aunt, who lived in the center of Berlin near the big shopping district, and she said, "You don't know what's going on here. They're burning the synagogues. Terrible things are happening." She told my mother, and she didn't know this because there was nothing of that kind going on in the district where we lived, which was at that time called Kaiserallee, and a very happy working ground for Jewish doctors. Quite a number had their practices in that district. And my father he always maintained Hitler could not survive, and he decided we were all right. We had enough savings to go on more or less the same way. And then the awful thing happened that a German doctor was brought in to take up his practice, and he could no longer work in Germany. And that must have been just such a terrible shock that he couldn't take it in, that this should happen to him, who was a popular GP in Germany with speciality in tuberculosis, which at that time was rife, and he just didn't follow it. And it was only he had the sense to send my brother and sister abroad. My brother went to America and my sister went to Israel, and she actually married a doctor who was trained in Germany, and my father helped him for his final examinations because he found out that there were vacancies in Israel, and he prepared for what you call it, Aliyah, don't you? And they went to Israel on their wedding day. And the wedding, this was rather interesting, because his family, of course, wanted a religious wedding. And so my mother said she's not going to synagogue for any weddings or whatever. But in the Jewish religion, if you have a rabbi and you have a chuppah, then you can have your wedding in your home. So that's what she agreed to. She would have a wedding at home. That's what she did for my sister and her then fiancé.
So Eva, I'm just going to show, this is a picture of you and your father.
Yes.
And this is a picture with you and your sister Lily and your brother Fred.
But I don't think it's on, there's a photograph of myself with my father, but I don't think it's on the same page. Oh yes, it is. Well, that shows how we loved each other. I was a great admirer of my father.
And there was a big age difference between you and your brother and your sister.
Yes, 10 years and 11 years. So they had an entirely different life to me, because my life was always darkened by Hitler. You know, that was in the background.
Here's a picture of you as a young girl in the 20s.
Yeah, I was very pretty then.
And you still are now. And Eva, do you remember going to school?
What?
Do you remember going to school and your German friends? Do you remember your childhood?
Well, I was never very popular, really, at the German school. I mean, and the thing is this, my father was in the First World War, and he had an Iron Cross first class. And when the time came, German Jewish children were not allowed to be in state schools, and they had to leave. But in my case, it was different, because my father had the Iron Cross first class, and I could stay in the school. I personally think, out of loyalty to the other Jewish children, he should have also taken me away. But the thought never crossed his head. All he wanted me to have a good education, which my sister had been at the same school. She had finished there at the age of 18, and of course I was 10 years younger, so it was not exactly a happy time for me. But that's what he said here, that I should stay at school, never, because I was receiving such a good education. And finally, of course, all the Jewish children were sent home, and I had to go to a Jewish school then. And my cousins were already there. They, as I said, well, her mother, my Tante Lena, she's called, she lost 2 husbands when she was a very young woman, and in each time, the first husband, she had 1 boy, and the second, and he died, well, one died of the Spanish flu in America, and the other one died from a fall from a horse. And then she had 1 son for the first husband, and then 2 children with the second husband. But that happened within 3 or 4 years. And so to me, she was always a tragic person. And then when the really bad times came, we had relations in England, and this relation was never married, and he decided to leave a legacy for all his German relations. And in our text, the Gestapo said, your uncle was very wise to put a sentence in his will that the legacy could only be paid out in England and London and could not be transferred to any other country. In my aunt's case, and this is a mystery to me, how is it that the Germans knew everything about his money and this will? Because in the case of my aunt, they immediately asked for a passport and said, you will not leave Germany with English money. It's impossible. And you can't emigrate, and they took her passport. And she was actually, well, I won't say killed, because they, in Czechoslovakia, in what was a place called, well, you have to put that in yourself, because I'm a bit bad at remembering place names. And anyway, this is what happened. She died, it was in Terezin, that's his name. You could edit your interview.
You're doing amazing. It's in Terezin's
everybody's heard of Terezin. And that's where she died. And also her first son from her first marriage, he had, now what's that disease called?
Bipolar.
He was bipolar, and the Germans also said he would never be allowed to emigrate. And he did not pay. He left Germany, of course, with his mother, and they died within 6 months of each other in Terezin. He's also got his pictures in the book.
And were they taken in Kristallnacht?
Because I was very friendly with him. See, he could never find a job. There he is, I think. Hans Lippmann, he's called, was called. And he used, my father employed him to receive the patients in his house. And he would sit with me in my father's study, and I used to have my tea and spend a lot of time with him in the afternoons and try to encourage him to have some more cheerful thoughts. But he was in a terrible depression all the time. We were together, and in the end I had to give up. I thought I could cure him, and I would bring up subjects which I think would interest him. Nothing interested him, of course, and there we were. And when we came to England, I never mentioned his name to his half-brother and half-sister, because I thought they would be upset if they even heard his name. And that was a pity, really, because they might have been. It's only just before the book was published that my daughter went to the house, and they began to talk about him, and all they said was that their mother adored him. That was her first son. And it seems a pity on my part that I didn't ever speak to them about him, because it would only been a good thing. And when when this daughter, when she came to England in the Kindertransport, and he took her to the train, not her mother. So he was very kind to her in that way.
And Eva, can I ask you, in Kristallnacht, I think they took, during Kristallnacht...
What?
During Kristallnacht, they took your father away. Your father was taken to
Sachsenhausen. Well, it was terrible, a terrible shock for my mother and for me. It was bad enough that we lost the practice, that he couldn't be a doctor anymore. He just sat at home, but he also did a lot of research on tuberculosis, and that's how he spent his time after he was stopped from working as a doctor. And, well, it was a very unhappy time for my parents and for me. And I suffered through this kind of thing throughout my childhood.
But your mother was very courageous. She went to the police station to get him released.
Yes. She accompanied my mother to everything. But she fell victim to the Nazis by being sent away to this Theresienstadt. And we went to Germany in a party of people from the Association for Jewish Refugees in England, the SAJR it's called, and we paid this visit to Berlin, and there is a train station outside in one of the suburbs, and there are all the German arranged sending the Jewish people to the various camps from there, and it was hidden away in a wood away from places where people lived, just off the Grunewald, which was situated there. And we went on this, it was a group, and there was even in our party a lady, I mean she was grown up now of course, but who'd been there as a child with her mother and lost her mother in, I think, Theresienstadt as well. And they had prayers there for everybody. It was a very, very moving occasion, and our daughter came with us.
And you visited Sachsenhausen as well? On that visit in 2018?
Well, I don't know. I've actually been told, but I don't know whether it's been cancelled or not, that there's going to be a celebration in Berlin for, you shouldn't call it celebration, but for that meeting in Berlin when they decided to kill all the Jews in Europe. And I read about it in the AJR when it was first planned, and they wanted to have photographs of people with their grandchildren, if possible, first and second generation immigrants. And I said I was interested in being part of this, and they came here to this house to photograph a photograph of me and my grandson, one of my grandsons. I've got several, and I was pleased to provide the photograph. But the photograph is in this book, but I've never heard about this taking place in Berlin. I don't know whether it's been postponed or what. I never heard another word, but they did come here, and I was among the first people who were photographed for it, for the exhibition.
Eva, can I ask, you went to where they had the Wannsee conference?
What?
Where they had the Wannsee conference?
Well, they were going to have it in Berlin, this conference, but I don't think it's taking place. What was supposed to be this autumn, and I haven't seen any more literature about it. So I think it was just a waste of time for me and for him.
And Eva, can I ask, what is your recollections of growing up in Berlin?
Pardon?
What is your recollections of growing up in Berlin, in the city before Hitler came to power? What do you remember about Berlin?
No, sorry, I'm not...
Eva, what do you remember about Berlin growing up before Hitler came into power?
Well, I was a
life?
schoolgirl, and my children, actually, my own children, were disgusted. I went on a Hitler march. That was whole school. I mean, it was a girls' school, and we had to wear our gym outfit, and marched through Berlin. And we had black shorts and white shirts, and vests really they were. And we marched through Berlin. I was asked to come. It was at the time when there were no more Jewish children in school except for me, because I was definitely the only one left in my school, because not so many people had Iron Cross first class like my father did, which he didn't give up. My son has now got this first class. I think we show it somewhere in the book. And it was ridiculous, really. But anyway, I went on a Hitler March, and I didn't know what it was all about, actually. But I just imagined it was to show young womanhood to the people in the streets.
And Eva, do you remember the Olympic Games?
Pardon?
Do you remember the Olympic Games?
The what?
The Olympic Games.
Huh?
The Olympic Games.
Oh yes. I didn't go on myself, but my best friend, I mean, we were all crazy about sport, whether we're Jewish or not. And of course, our gym teacher, he was called Yogi, and he happened to be, when my husband had a stroke, he was in the Royal Free Hospital, and Yogi, I don't know about his surname now, he was in the same ward. He hadn't had a stroke, but only a mini stroke. And I was sitting by my father's bed, and opposite was Yogi and Mrs. Grandson, anyway, a relation. And Yogi said, "Can we go home now? It's supper time." And it was, I think, his uncle or whatever. And he said, "When you go, you are in hospital, you can't go home now, I'm sorry." And when he said Yogi, of course, I didn't recognize him, obviously, because it was so long ago, and he didn't remember my face either. But I said, afterwards he came, I called across probably that I knew Yogi. There's only one Yogi in the world. And so later on he came over to talk to me. Very frequently we had conversations in the hospital, and it was a big laugh for the nurses when we said we knew each other when I was 11 years old. And I was then married and had children, so a long time had elapsed. And then we met at the Royal Free Hospital. And in fact, my daughter and I were going to write something for the Hammond High, but we never did in the end. But now the Hammond High have written about my book and said that I published it when I was 99.
Eva, so we're going back to when the Olympic Games, yeah?
Pardon?
Going back to the Berlin Olympic Games.
Yes.
What can you remember about that time?
Well, we followed all the newspapers, and I was very interested in Nomi, I think he was called. That was one of the runners.
Jesse Owens.
And I remember being very keen to see him. I don't know whether they had television then or not, but there were lots of photographs of, I think he's called Nomi, who was the biggest, wonderful runner.
Jesse Owens.
And I admired him very much. We took my friend as well, Steffi, my friend, who was at school with me. Her father managed to get tickets for her to go to the Olympic Games. And of course, Yogi took a great interest. He was original, well, before they all became so anti-Semitic, he was still playing sport in Germany and being a big runner. And so he followed the Olympic Games.
And Eva, can I ask you, do you remember any of the Nazi youth marching in Berlin or the swastikas?
Yeah, the Olympic Games. We were very keen. We were so interested in sport at that time. All children were.
But when Hitler became more powerful and the Nazi Party came to power, do you remember the atmosphere in Berlin? Do you remember the swastikas and the...
Yes, well, of course, Yogi was originally in a team for the Olympic Games, but he was soon thrown out. And he never had...
Eva, do you remember the Nazi youth and the swastikas in Berlin?
Yes, I remember all the marching that went on and the songs they sung, which, to tell you the truth, I quite like hearing the songs.
Wow. Do you remember the tune? Can you sing
Yes,
it?
but I'm not musical at all, so I can't sing them.
You can try.
Do you remember some of the words?
But it so happened, my husband was actually of Austrian nationality, and so he knew Austria very well. And after our marriage, when it became possible to travel, we always went on holiday in Austria. We used to go to a place called Lech, year after year. And I met a German woman on one of my walks, and she also came to Lech on holiday, and in fact she went every year, and was very sporty herself, and she knew all about the Olympic Games, of course.
And even the tune?
But she was not Jewish. But she became a great friend of mine, and we went on many walks together. Yeah, anyway, they lived in a bed and breakfast place in this resort, and the landlady was a local singer, and she had all the songbooks. But then I don't want you to repeat this to everybody. I got very enthusiastic about the German songs, and it was on the tip of my tongue to ask her to play Mein Heimatland. And at the last minute I stopped myself because I thought I was giving the wrong impression on the other German people who were there. And I didn't say one more word. I just remembered, ach, du liebes mein Heimatland or something, I thought. So you see, I had also inherited from my father these feelings about Germany that made me think that even if I fortunately didn't express my feelings. So that's what I was like at that time.
And did you feel personal anti-Semitism? Did you experience it?
Well, it was a general thing. And you know, that's when they make such a fuss about anti-Semitism. It does not impress me because it was thickly in the atmosphere. I mean, you just knew that people were anti-Semitic. In fact, everybody was anti-Semitic in Germany, and I became well used to it. And it did not impress me. And when here in England people complained about anti-Semitism, I thought, this is an ordinary feeling which is worldwide, and you best ignore it or adapt to it, but there's nothing to be taken very seriously. That was my feeling about anti-Semitism. It is now. And when people moan about it, I think they're being very silly, because it's a fact of life.
You feel it. But did you have any personal experiences?
Well, not in Germany. I would say I did once in England when I met... at the time we were living in Devonshire and in a hotel, and my father was interned at the time. That Sachsenhausen wasn't the only time he was interned. He was also interned in England, but not on the Isle of Man like most people. He was, first of all, in a terrible camp under canvas somewhere in Devonshire, and it was such hardship for him, and he made an application, or my mother made, I don't know, to be transferred, and he was sent to Liverpool, where they lived in flats, a whole lot of refugees, but it's not very well known that any of them were put up in Liverpool. Everybody you hear about was on the Isle of Man, and they have celebrations now of people who were there, although they must all be dead by now.
And Eva, what do you remember about leaving Germany and leaving your home?
Well, it was terrible. Unfortunately, I had an uncle, my mother's brother, who was like us, not only secular, but also very pro-Germany. And in World War I, he'd been a German prisoner of war in New Zealand. And that was in company with all the expensive tours of boats doing world cruises. And the captains were there, very proud German captains, and the guests on the cruises all have been very rich people, obviously, because it was such an expensive thing to do a world cruise at that early time in the First World War. And so he had what's called a Stammtisch, which his companions from the prison camp in New Zealand, and that lasted all his life. And he also never married, and he was devoted to these other Germans who'd been imprisoned in New Zealand. And then he saw the danger of living in Germany, and he thought his former friends would look after him when the time came and rescue him from the Gestapo, but they didn't. And he was, at the very end, he was deported, so we are called to Riga, and he must have suffered terribly. And that wasn't all, because at the time we had some German Christian friends who were doing research on what was going on, and they found out that his train was diverted to Lithuania, which is a long way further. So he must have spent at least another 2 days on this train, and they had, in Lithuania, they were all shot when they came off the train. Unfortunately, my mother was dead by then. She never heard it. She only heard that he was shot in Riga, which was harmless compared to what happened to him in the end, to be taken on to Lithuania. And my husband's grandparents were also, this is very strange to me, because they came to Vienna, were born in Vienna, and they were also sent to Riga. But according to all the people we know, they never arrived. And my husband always thought they died from the cold on the train. But there is no record, because they have records of people who were on those trains, but no records have ever been found of my husband's grandparents. And he used to live with them in Vienna because his father had to emigrate to Poland, and because he lost his job he was working in a German bank, and he had a cousin in Poland who had a job in a bank and got him a job in Poland.
Here's just a picture of you and your husband. Yeah. And can I ask you, Eva, do you remember leaving your home?
Pardon?
Do you remember leaving your home the last time you left your home?
Yes, got the picture of the house after the bombing in there.
It was destroyed with the bombing.
It must be near the end. Not so much of a front.
Where is it, near the end, did you say?
Huh?
Did you say
it's over here.
Oh.
So this is a picture of your beautiful home. But it was after it was bombed.
After the bombing, yes.
But it was a beautiful apartment you lived in.
It was very big, about 18 rooms altogether.
And
Very
your father
big.
had his consultation rooms?
Yeah, we had a surgery. We had, you know, we had a surgery, my father's sitting room, and the patient's waiting room, and a little sewing room we had, and a lot of other rooms. But then later on, of course, that was the friend of the house was taking over, was a German doctor, and we had to live in the back. And we had to use the back stairs. My father had to go up the back stairs. He never said one word about this, where the deliveries were brought straight to the kitchen. And he never mentioned that. But of course we came up the front stairs originally. That was finished for us when this German doctor arrived.
And even when you had to leave, when you were going to England,
Well,
what do you
that we
remember?
came to England was a miracle, because only through our relations here, because the thing was this at that time, in England you had to pass another examination to be a doctor, while in America, in New York, etc., you could start working right away because they recognized the German qualification. So that was why father insisted that when he did leave, he was going to go to America, but we were too far back on the list. We never got a chance. But here, now I will tell you something which I don't think is all that well known. We had, they were called, well, never mind what they were called, we had 3 big, they're called lifts, that's right, to where our belongings were kept in the free harbour in Hamburg. And eventually we heard our possessions were put into auction, and they were sold, as it said at the time, for the benefit of the German people. And I will tell you a very strange story. It was not very well known at all. My son-in-law had some legal work to do in Hamburg, and he invited my daughter to accompany him. They went to Hamburg, and that happened, I think, at the beginning of this year. And when she was in Hamburg, she wanted to find things out about the Jewish population. She knew that Hamburg had been very badly bombed in the Second World War. And somehow she heard the name of a German woman who was making some German research on these lifts and the harbour of Hamburg, with the property of people who all became refugees. Some of them, of course, reached America, and some of them, I think, came to England. And so she phoned that lady, and you know, she phoned back in a very short time, and she had all our records. And my father, of course, you couldn't do anything with your money because the Germans took it all. And he bought, for instance, an X-ray machine on rails. I mean, he was equipped for like a hospital in order to start this practice in New York. Well, it all came to nothing. And this lady gave my daughter all the details of every room in our house. It was all there in her papers. It was absolutely amazing. And I always maintained we arrived in England only with hand luggage. But it turned out it was not, I've only just now found out, it was not 100% true. Because that lady in Germany, we had a Zoom conversation with her here in my office, and my daughter and I were on the phone, on the Zoom, and we talked to her, and suddenly she said that she had some colleagues in Germany who were dealing with art. Well, you know how much art was stolen by the Germans. So they said, did we know a certain painter? So I got very excited because I recognized the name. I got up off my chair, and my daughter said, you can't do this during the Zoom. Sit down and do it afterwards, you can go. And when the Zoom was over, I went to look at, I'll show you in a minute, a picture. And there was a picture there from what I called her auntie. And I'd been sent to her as a girl to learn painting, which was a waste of money and time because I was no good at painting. But of course I knew the name. I knew her name. I said to the lady in Germany, is this painter a man or a woman? And she said she didn't know. Okay, she didn't know. Well, after our conversation, I rushed out to look at the painting, and it still got her name on the back exactly. And because she was a great friend of my mother, and I think my mother kept this, because our other paintings were sold, but they weren't works of treasure, really. And this must have been a treasure for my mother. And she never mentioned her again to me. But since then I found out that she actually emigrated to England, to America, I mean, and became quite famous again. And it wasn't true, because I in my book even, I say I came only with what I called my totem, because we are so interested in Red Indians. And there's also a picture of my totem here, a little elephant, I think it is. My daughter, I know my daughter put it in there. It comes later. And but I now find that I've got this painting, and the only reason I can think of is that my mother couldn't part with it, because this was a very good friend of hers who painted it. And on top there, of the top books, they're also from Germany, strangely enough. I never thought of it, because when we were on the train to come to England, we only, as I said, sat the hand luggage. Why there's books up there, they're written in paperbacks of German classics. And I think my parents didn't leave them behind, because we always thought it would be of some kind of value. So it's not true that we came with nothing. We came, first of all, with this painting, and I'm so happy now to have it, because I remember the painter, and I remember, and some I don't understand how. But I can understand it in a way that my mother lost touch with her because she left for England, and my parents were desperate to find somewhere to go to. But unfortunately we had our English relations who helped us very much. And one of my relations at the time was very prominent. He was supposed to be the youngest judge in Germany, a man called Sir Otto Count Freund. He became a Sir in England because of his legal work on the trade union movement. And he was involved in a legal case with some Germans, and he spoke for them, and he said they were not communists, as the Hitler side of the court claimed. And he was told at the end of the case he had to disappear that night from Germany, otherwise he would end up in prison. And to his biggest shock, he knew what Hitler was like. He knew it. This was very early when he took power in Germany, and he left. But his wife was Aryan, which now sounds terribly silly, but she could travel to and fro, and she came back to England, packed up all their goods and stuff, because at that time you could take everything with you to England. It was the very first year when Hitler took power, and there were no regulations about this. And he didn't realize how lucky he was at the time. Of course he thought it was a terrible thing to happen, that he had to leave Germany, leave his practice and not be a judge. But he sat down and learned English law, and they established himself in England to the extent that he was honoured by the Queen and became Sir Otto Freud. And what makes me terribly sad, he's married in Goodness Green in the cemetery, because again he was secular, being of our family. And there we were. And his wife, this Aryan lady, apparently to be Sir, was meaningless to him, because it's not on his, he's got a memorial stone in the cemetery.
Eva, here is the picture of the totem of the bear. So you used to play Indians, cowboys and Indians, with your friends?
Yes, and my daughter has taught me that Red Indians are passé, and now they're Native Americans. And she began to alter my book a bit. I didn't like this at all, but I couldn't stop her.
And Eva, here's a picture of you when you came to the United Kingdom.
Yeah. Is that my totem here?
Yeah.
Yes, there it is.
And Eva,
you can see it next door.
do you remember the trip? Do you remember coming to England?
So the funny thing is now I've not only got the totem, I've got the painting.
Eva, do you remember the actual journey from Germany
Yes.
to England?
Terrible. I was quite ill. See, first of all, we went to my uncle's house, who of course he called it Jüdische Hast. Do you know any German?
I understand from Yiddish. Yeah.
Yes, Jüdische Hast. That we had to go to England. But it saved my father's life, of course. And now I've got two things, the totem and the painting, which came from Germany.
And Eva, when you came to England, where did you first come? Which area did you go to first?
Well, we lived quite near here. And I went to school, Camden School for Girls. And I was disgusted because of the shoes. You know, I just, in Germany I was old enough not to wear these shoes with things across. I thought it was very babyish. I had to get the school uniform. It was all new to me. But I had a very good friend from Germany. I knew her in Germany, but they had emigrated much earlier than us. Her father had more sense, because my father had no sense, except for the big children, my brother and sister, because they were grown up by then. And so they escaped everything. They also, my sister loved Berlin. And although when she already was living in Israel, she came back once. And we met in Switzerland. We were on holiday, and she said, I want to come back to Berlin. And we spread ourselves, the family, and we had her at the end, so that if she couldn't get permanent to go, she would be the last one. She would stay and then go back straight to Israel. But nobody took any notice of her, and she went back to Germany. And I had all our old friends and one thing and another. And Yeah, and then one more thing happened. When she left school, she wanted to enjoy herself, and my father said, no, you're going to get a job. Don't think that you can just play about now because you've left school, because he was 18 at the time. So she learned shorthand typing, and she became someone's secretary, and she became part of the German of Labour. I mean, she was part of the civil service in Germany, but only for about 3 years, because she got married at 21. That's when she went to Israel. But as a result of that, she got a German pension in Israel when she was 60 or whatever. She got a normal German pension because she'd been in the civil service or something when she was 18. From 18 to 21. I don't think she worked more than 3 years.
Uh-huh.
So she was very lucky. And then she said to me I had to try and get a German pension. And I said, well, it's ridiculous. I was a schoolgirl and I had some compensation for interrupted education. And they said, no, you apply for a pension. And she hammered that into my... And I said, I don't want the German pension, I'm not interested. I went on and on. But she insisted. And then in the end, I did get a very small German pension. And the amazing thing is, I don't even like to say it loudly, I've got it to this day.
Sure.
And pensions are not our pensions. People are saying they belong to you.
Even when you came to England, how did the other girls react in your class?
Pardon?
When you came to England, how did the other girls react? Were they friendly to you? Did you?
Yes, they were friendly.
And did they ask you about your background or?
No, they weren't interested. But this is all different in England. They didn't really, the girls have shown no interest. They just thought it was very strange, so many foreigners. But then the school was evacuated, as I've said to Grantham, and my father wouldn't let me go. And I had a terrible quarrel with my parents. I never forgave them for that. To this day I haven't forgiven them, because I was very ambitious as a girl. And I wanted to, but I did get to university, but I took the wrong course, and I had no advice from anybody. And in those days, when now degrees are quite so general, not necessary, but in those days you had to have an honest degree, otherwise you were nobody. And I had a general degree, not an honest degree. And I soon realized I would never succeed unless I had an honest degree. And naturally, one of my lecturers said, so why don't you take German at university? But I took it only as a part of the general degree, so that didn't count. But I took my degrees in 2 years instead of 3. So I thought, but for English had no subsidiary subjects, and it would have taken me 2 years. And by that time, the soldiers came back to university and claimed all the places. And I had this one lecturer, she didn't think much of me, and she said, well, you weren't very brilliant, were you? So you can't get another year at university. So I said, okay, I won't stay at university. Then I couldn't stay to take an English degree. That's what I wanted, English honours. And she didn't allow that. So I left university, and now after that my life became quite sad. And it was my parents' fault, because my friend with whom I'd studied at the Camden School for Girls, she went straight to university at the beginning of Second World War, and had a much, or I think became a school teacher, which I hadn't envisaged anyway, because I was going to be a writer, but it took me until I was 99
Well, you wrote...
to actually...
You did it, Eva.
You did. In the end, Eva, you wrote this most amazing book. But Eva, here's a picture with you and your mother and your sister Lily. It's a wonderful picture.
It was a good thing that Janet had this wonderful idea to put all
And
this.
here you're at the
photographs in.
University College in London.
Yeah.
And with your friends. And Eva, you had a very interesting friend, an amazing friend, Brenda.
Huh?
You had a very interesting... If you could tell us a little bit about your friend Brenda.
Look, the pictures here. I just showed it to...
Is that the same picture?
She had polio.
Yes, look. Here's
So
the
this is the
photograph.
picture. And Eva, could you relate this incredible story about
Yes.
who she got married to?
Her
It's-
story. She lived in Barrow-in-Furness, and she had infantile paralysis when she was very young, about 2 years old or something. Anyway, her brother was a tailor, and when Britain occupied Auschwitz camp, he'd been in Auschwitz, and he had a photograph of his wife and son on a heap of dead people. And anyway, he offered to take him into his business in Barrow. And this man arrived at Barrow together with this photograph of his wife and son on a heap of dead. And when he met anybody of the population, he pulled out this photograph to show it to them. But her parents invited him to dinner because he was working for their son. And he took one look at Brenda, and she was, as you say, she walked with two sticks and was a very small person and rather broad and unsightly, but very intelligent. I was a great friend of hers. And they got married, and she was in hospital for weeks in bed, and the doctors at Barrow-in-Furness really looked after her as best they could. And some of the population said, "What? She's pregnant? Somebody misshapen like that should never have a child." And being rather horrible about it. We were all very excited. And then this is her son. This is the baby. I mean, would you believe it? If you'd seen her, you wouldn't even believe that she ever could have a son. And he is now, well, he's retired by now, but he is a lecturer at Cardiff University.
It's amazing.
And he's been brilliant. And he went to Carmel College, which was the only Jewish public school in England. It's closed now, incidentally. But I asked my son-in-law, of course, he and his fathers were also at Carmel College, and I said, did they have scholarships? He said, yes, of course we had scholarships, because rich Jewish people, donated money to take this boy. It's rather sweet.
Michael, his name is, isn't it?
He became a very intelligent young man.
It's an amazing story.
And went to Oxford and made him a great career. And he's still working at Cardiff University. And of course I've kept in touch with him vaguely over the years.
And Eva, when you went back to Germany, was it very emotional for you to go back?
Yes, I think so. I didn't want to go. That's the first thing. I didn't want to go to Berlin. And my sister, she was so enthusiastic about Berlin. Can you take... no, turn it off.
It's affecting the video, Eva.
I'll just move
Oh,
it. I'll
I
move
see.
it even.
You need to put the
Yeah.
light on for the video. If you sort of move and work this way a bit, you might.
So, no, I took it all in my stride, of course. The thing is, when we got to this uncle, as I said, he was also secular and had all this relationship with his fellow prisoners from New Zealand for years after the war. And we had never been to his house, never. And in fact, we had never been to, my father had two brothers. We didn't go to their house either. I don't know why that was, but we didn't. And one of his sons lived in America, and I invited him to our house, but he was such a bad guest that I had to get rid of him. But I met him here in London, in fact I think earlier this year, and he was now married to a very nice girl, and we got on very well. And when I visited Israel, because my daughter lived there, I never saw him because he lived in a different place. And it was a surprise to me how well he developed since he was married, and she was charming. And so we're still in touch now. And but what happened when I came to my uncle's house, I developed a very itch in my back. I felt really ill. My father examined me and said, nothing wrong with you. But it must have been like a sort of nervous disease. I felt very unhappy. And and I've described this in my book, I felt I had no future whatsoever. Because I had to go to England. I didn't have a single friend, it seemed. It wasn't true, because I immediately met this friend who I knew in Berlin, and I was also taking up our family. Her mother was very energetic. We did all the German things, went with her going for country walks and picking mushrooms and that sort of thing, which is typically German.
And Eva, what happened to your extended family?
What?
What happened to the rest of the family?
To what?
The rest of the family, to your extended cousins and...
Oh, everybody's had great careers. I mean, first of all, my uncle became a lawyer in no time, and she did child therapy or something.
Did a large majority manage to leave Germany, or did...
Well, no, a lot of them got killed.
A lot of them were killed.
I've only got really immediate family, and that goes for now. I've got a couple of cousins, but I've got another book with loads of photographs of the birthday party. Did I show you the birthday party?
Yeah.
But even a lot of your cousins, did they remain in Germany, and were they...
What?
The rest of your family, did a lot of them remain in Germany, and they...
Well, anybody who remained in Germany was killed.
And from your family?
Yes. But by that time, a lot of people had gone to other countries, friends of my parents. I mean, when we left England, we first of all stopped in Netherlands to visit their most intimate friends. And but we didn't have many people left, really, because anybody who stayed in Germany was killed there or deported somewhere.
And even when you went back to see your home, which is it's been rebuilt.
Yes, we went back to the house.
Was it difficult to go back? Was it difficult?
It had been completely rebuilt by then into modern flats.
But was it difficult to go back?
Well, I don't know. I took all that in my stride. I felt settled in England, although I felt that I could never reach a proper position in life because of my wrong degree.
But even I just want to mention, and Sharon, if you could show, you were honoured by the King and the Queen.
Yeah, yes,
which is
but I tell you,
something.
after I got the MBE,
There you are, Eva. That's you with the Queen and the MBE. Here's your picture.
yes, this meant everything to me to get my MBE.
It's a
I
major
felt
achievement.
rehabilitated.
From a refugee to receiving the
Yes.
MBE. It is incredible. Eva. It's something unbelievable. And then
then-
you met with King Charles.
He was. He
Oh, it was
hadn't
Prince
been,
Charles.
Yeah, no, he was king, but he hadn't had the coronation yet. That's right, isn't it, Eva? The Queen had passed away at this time. His mother had passed away, so he was king, but he hadn't had the coronation yet. That was on Finchley Road, wasn't it, Eva?
Yes.
This one was it the Jewish Centre?
JW3.
JW3.
The king, incidentally, has always, before he became king, taken great interest in the refugees. He's been very good.
'Cause
I went to a concert, a Jewish concert with my daughter, and the king came, although he was not king, he was prince. And he said, in the interval, I invite all children transport to see me. And that's what he did. And my daughter and I, we couldn't go because we had not been kinder transport children.
But his own grandmother was Chasidei Motalam. She was righteous amongst the nations in
Yeah.
Greece. She saved the Jewish families in Greece, his grandmother.
Yes,
And-
he's been incredibly good to refugees.
And we have a letter from the President of the Federal Republic of Germany.
Yeah.
Sharon, could you read it? Because I think it's something...
Yeah,
Also
it's in English. Dear Mrs. Evans, I warmly congratulate you on the occasion of your birthday and send you greetings from your former home, Berlin. The circumstances that forced you and your family to leave your home in 1939 brought shame on Germany. The fact that you still choose to talk to pupils in Berlin about your childhood and your family's fate is admirable and fills me with great thankfulness and deep humility. It is important for young people to learn how much suffering was wrought upon humanity by racism and anti-Semitism. Having a survivor like you speak to them about everything she experienced firsthand is of inestimable value. Please rest assured that the vast majority of people in Germany today reject and take a firm stand against hatred of Jews and nationalism. We will not allow this spectre of the past to again divide people and cause suffering and misery. I have learned that your father, Dr. Felix Klopstock, was deported to Sachsenhausen concentration camp after the night of the pogrom in November 1938. I plan to visit the memorial there this year to mark the anniversary of the pogrom on 9th of November. When I do, your father and the humiliation that he and so many others were subjected to there will be on my mind. In conclusion, I wish you above all good health for the future, as well as a lovely birthday that I hope you will be able to celebrate with your family despite the COVID-19 pandemic. Sincerely yours, Frank Walter Steinmeier.
And that's the President of Germany.
There you go.
And Sharon, if you could show, this is... What a magnificent...
In German it sounds even better.
No, but I wouldn't be able to say that in German.
What a magnificent letter that you received. What a wonderful birthday wish from the President of Germany. So even from a refugee,
Yes.
look what you've
And
achieved.
my daughter thought of that title.
Now, Eva, if I could ask you, what message do you impart?
What?
What message do you impart to your children and to the future generations?
Well, I'm so proud of them. they've all done, my grandchildren, I mean, I've got three in England and two in Israel, so there's five grandchildren, and now hopefully I'm waiting for my granddaughters to get married, but I may wait and wait, because young people now have different ideas about marriage, and they think they've got all the time in the world to get married. They have never learned that life is not like that. But at my recent birthday, my grandchildren came from Israel, and they were delighted with the book because of the photographs, because they missed out on all that.
But what message do you give?
Huh?
What message do you impart and give to the future generations?
Well, I do think they have to work hard nowadays. You can't be lazy. That's what I learned from my father. You've got to work day and night. And I did that when I was younger, when I could, and now I feel at a loss because I'm here and not doing anything.
And Eva, you're amazing for 99.
You are amazing.
Absolutely amazing.
Until 120.
Yeah, but I tell you in what way I am amazing. Because when I go to the doctors in the hospital and the nurses, because I talk normally, and they all take me for much younger. It doesn't
You
mean
look younger
me any
and you
good,
are. Yes.
actually. But they can't believe how old I am, really.
Eva, it's been such a great honor and a privilege to be in your home and to meet you. And you know, you are absolutely unbelievable. Really, you know.
I don't believe in any of that.
Eva, you know, Canon Hore, you look incredible, and you are just, you know, you went through so much, and look how positive you are, and you just have, your whole personality is just so, it's just unbelievable. You really are somebody we must all strive to emulate. You really are.
Obviously, I'm pleased when you compliment me like that. Of course, I feel very downtrodden, actually.
No, but even look at the book that you said you wanted to be a writer, and you are a writer. And
yes,
this book,
even my former chairwoman who put me into that position with the Academic Association, she said, now you are an author.
you are. And this book, Once a Refugee, Always a Refugee. But even, you know, it's not only a refugee that has been honored with the MBE from the Queen and from meeting the King, and also from the Jewish societies. You've had tremendous accolades. You volunteer in the museum, and you've had tremendous awards. And even, you know, you should just have only mazel and brocha till 120 plus, and you are an inspiration to all of us. And you must just be in good health and happiness and enjoy your beautiful family. And I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. It's been such an honor and a privilege to be here in your home and to meet you.
Well, that's very nice of you.
And I really appreciate it.
I must I tell you something about dentistry. Because
You're not going to tell us your dental skills, are you, Eva?
yeah, I'm just going to tell you that I've got an infected wisdom tooth, and I think sometimes it's going to kill me.
God forbid. Even that tooth will be till 120, and may that tooth, you know.
Yeah, the dentist wasn't at all pleased to find out about this, and nor was I. And in the end I saw an Indian dentist, and she said, I could only give you one piece of advice: forget it.
Even, please God, that truth will be with you for many, many years to come, in good health and happiness, and really just with all the blessings which you so deserve.
This is the painting that Eva only found out about in the last couple of months, that her daughter, when she went to Germany, found out about. There was one of the possessions from Eva's house in Berlin. It's called the Winter Tree.
So this is the picture when Eva got her MBE.
Yeah, that's at the palace.
At the palace.
And
This
these
is
are all just from her life,
with
really,
Thomas
over
Harding.
the years. This was Eva with her MBE on. She's actually got it on there. In the house.
And here's with the Queen.
And here's with the Queen.
Eva, what a incredible life you've.
How did you meet Janet?
And this is the little bear. So these are the original pictures from
Yes, he was there. That's his as well.
from Eva with her mom and with her brother and her sister.
Yeah, that's his stuff.
And that's from Felix Klopstock, 1912.
And this is all. I'm going to put it all inside the plastic folder, Eva, so it doesn't get lost. All right? I need to go and eat something. I'm so hungry.
You have that lunch?
No, because I wouldn't. I was in occupational therapy. It's 3:30. It's really dinner time. Elizabeth II, by the grace of God, of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and of her other realms and territories, Queen, Head of the Commonwealth, Defender of the Faith, and Sovereign of the most excellent order of the British Empire, to our truly and well-beloved Eva Evans. Whereas we have thought fit to nominate and appoint you to be an ordinary member of the civil division of our said most excellent order of the British Empire. We do by these presents grant unto you the dignity of an ordinary member of our said order, and hereby authorise you to have, hold and enjoy the said dignity and rank of an ordinary member of our aforesaid order, together with all and singular the privileges thereunto belonging or appertaining, given at our court at St James's under our sign manual and the seal of our said order, this 31st day of December 1994, in the 43rd year of our reign, by the Sovereign, and it's signed here.
And there's Elizabeth, her signature.
Elizabeth R.
It's incredible. Wow, this is so precious. And we also have there's a from Portugal.
Yeah, this is, I'm not 100% sure what that is up there.
And then we have from the Jewish Museum of London.
Yep,
As a volunteer.
the volunteer.
But to have from the Queen with the seal.